see. Double tap. There we go. Excellent. For those of you just now joining us, welcome. My name is Jay. I see that you guys are here. This is great. Thanks for joining. Hey, I see a number of you flooding on in. Excellent. Glad to be here. Welcome. Welcome. If this is your first time here, by all means, do me a favor. Go ahead and tell me where you're from, because I would love to know that. That's always fun. Hey, Ari, I see you. Welcome. Ryan, how are you? I always like to know that. And if this is also your first time here, or just tell me where you're from in general. If this is your first time here, type the word cash flow there. New Jersey and Chicago in the house. This is awesome. I'm glad that you guys are here. LA in the house, Atlanta. Excellent, excellent. Glad that you guys are here. Definitely. And for those of you watching on the replay, we welcome you guys as well. We welcome you guys as well. What's up, Jeff from Detroit? Love it. I'm glad that you guys are all here. I'm glad that you guys are all here. So, what it comes down to, what I wanted to discuss is that oftentimes we get stuck on getting started. And I know that could be a challenge for some of you. If you've ever had a challenge wondering how to get your real estate business started, give me some hands up or some hearts. Let me know. Give me a comment on some of those getting started challenges that you may have had when it comes to. Someone says they're still looking for a mentor in Detroit. Do you know of any? Sorry, not physically in Detroit. I don't have anyone there. Yes, I've got some hands raised. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When it gets a little challenging sometimes to figure out how to get things started, how to get your business started. You know what you want to accomplish, or at least you have an idea some ways, but you're like, what is the process from idea to implementation? How do I go from, concept to cash, right? That's what we really want to be able to do. And that's not always, it just doesn't seem like it's straightforward to figure out and to know how to make happen. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go over a simple way. And again, I'm very street simple, just, street smarts, not necessarily book smarts. For those of you joining for the first time or ever, my name is Jay, CEO of CashFlowDiary.com, where we invest our time to turn people into real estate entrepreneurs, business owners. That's what we do to help them produce cash flow so that hopefully with that, they can then go do whatever it is that they really, really wanted to do in the first place. So, and those are the things that I enjoy doing and have had the privilege now of doing for a number of years. And that's the great thing. Now, interestingly enough, someone's bringing this up already. The people often ask me, what kind of degrees or etc. you have, and again, I always tell people I have a PhD, public high school diploma. That's what I've got. So I've got street knowledge on how to go out there and build a portfolio that has hundreds and hundreds of units. That's what I know. And if you want to be able to do those types of things, one of the basic things, one of the most basic things that we need to make sure that we have is a plan in place. Now, many of you have probably heard of a business plan before. Those words are probably not unfamiliar to you. The challenge is when you hear that, most of us, we go blank, or we think some really thick document that we have to make, and that could be a challenge. And that has never worked, for me. That has never worked for me in any way, shape, or form to be able to give or do in some way to actually make things happen. And what it comes down to is we need a way that we can actually implement our ideas. Our ideas are great. I mean, because many of you have been in a store before. You've been in a store, you've been walking down the aisle, and as you're walking down the aisle, what ends up happening is you look at something, you're like, oh my gosh, I had that same idea. And you're wondering like, man, why didn't I do that? Well, that's simply because that other person knew how to take their idea and implement it, knew how to take that concept and turn it into cash. And I want to give you, in this particular, today, I want to give you some, just 5 simple questions that you can ask yourself in order to make that happen, and a way to get started building your business. one of the things that gets under my skin a lot with the real estate investing community is that we forget it's still a business. You know, businesses by default have lead generation systems, operational systems, you know, customer service systems. All of these systems are in place, and typically the CEO in a business, depending on its size, is not the one administering and doing all the pieces. And we're going to talk about that for sure. We're definitely going to be talking about that for sure. But I wanted to give you a framework, something you could use right now on your lunch break if you're still working, or, you know, when you're standing in line, type it on your phone. It doesn't really matter. And you're going to want to be ready to take some screenshots, because I've got some cards that we're going to be going through as well. We got some cards that we're going to be going through as well. By the way, someone's asking me, you missed what PhD I have. Well, I think it looks like Sarhill. My PhD is a public high school diploma. PhD. That is my PhD. That's what I've got. So what I was going to say though is if you'd like, what I would love you to do is feel free to share this with some friends, because it's going to help them, and nothing like growing together. Feel free to share on Facebook as well as on Twitter, and you guys can, if there are comments or peoples that are trolling around, feel free. You have total freedom to block them. You have total freedom to block them. Don't wait for me, because it gets a little challenging trying to block them as well as deliver the content at the same time. I'm not going to respond to them. I completely ignore it. So I'm just going to keep going that way, and you guys are more than free to do that. I give you permission. Please, by all means, help. But I want to get into these 5 questions, because these 5 questions I think will help you. So I'm curious if I want to know by a round of applause or hearts and likes and shares, put your hands up in the air. If I give you these 5 questions, because this is one of the things that irritates me as a teacher, but I know you guys are different. If I give you these 5 questions, will you use them? Specifically, will you use them today? Give me some hearts if you're going to use them today. Put your hands in the air. Give me some likes and comments. Will you use them today? That's what I want you to do. I promise you, they're easy enough for you to use, and you can have a clearer vision of what your business is supposed to look like if you use them, and I mean today. All right, excellent. Love it. All right, so here we go. The number one thing, now here's the interesting thing. Entire books have been written on just some of these questions in and of themselves. The number one thing when it comes down to getting your real estate business started that you must do, that must be present, is you must be clear on why on earth you want to be in business in the first place. No one ever stops to ask why. They don't think so, or their why is shallow. What do I mean by that? Ask somebody, why do you want to be a real estate investor? They say, well, I want more money. Well, that's shallow. Well, why do you want more money? Well, I'd like to make sure I have money for my kids' college. Okay, great. Makes sense. But why is that important to you? Well, it's important to me because I want my kids to have a better shot at life than I did. Okay, awesome. So you think by sending your kids to college, that's going to give them a better shot at life. Yes, that's what I believe. Excellent. So why is giving your kids a better shot at life more important? Well, because that's the definition to me of being a good parent. Oh, so what we're really saying is if you can be successful at building cash flow using real estate, you link that to being a good parent. Yes, that's way more emotionally connecting, and that's the number one thing most people are missing. They just go over the top and say, hey, I just want more money. That's wonderful, but that's not always the case. I know for myself, so let me give you a little bit of history real fast. My wife and I, we didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to do real estate investing. My wife has 2 degrees, not 1, 2, a bachelor's and a master's. As you know, I have a PhD. And what it comes down to is that we were in a situation where when she's pregnant, she cannot eat or drink, and I was unable to walk or talk. Well, that became the impetus to look out new ways to build and earn income, because if you can't eat or drink, you can't go to work. If you can't walk or talk, you can't go to work, right? So most of us are taught to go to school, get good grades, and get a job. The reason I started looking at real estate wasn't because I wanted to make more money. It's because I wanted to eat. I needed a way to eat if I couldn't walk and talk. Being born with asthma, my wife having her condition of hyperemesis when she's pregnant, and having a whole bunch of medical complications and a punctured lung made it impossible for me to do the traditional thing, which up until that time we were doing because I didn't know any better. Did you? And that's, most of us don't know, do better until we know better. And once you know better, do better, right? That's exactly what I'm talking about. So that became why I want to eat. So I'm doing these things to eat because this is now the new way to make that happen. And that's exactly the thing. You've got to drive that why deep enough to move you emotionally. Simon Sinek wrote a book, Start With Why. There's a reason for that. That one book alone is dedicated to this one question, the one that is most often skipped. Start with why. Question number 2 is then what? What? What on earth do you want to do? How do you want to provide value? Because people do, and this is the other place where real estate is specifically is so wide, it's so broad, it's so vast. You have so many places and choices and ways to make that happen. Totally get it. Here's the problem. The problem is that it's so wide, so vast, there's so much opportunity, you never make a decision and start making progress down any one journey, any one path, any one way. You must choose. It's a concept I like to call investor identity. What are you going to do? How are you specifically going to provide value? Let me give you a quick example. Walmart, Target, and Nordstrom's are stores that are in the United States that most people are familiar with. They're retail stores, right? Now, these 3 retail stores sell the same product, similar products, and there's one product in particular that I'm going to use that they sell that is the same. It's simply a shirt. You've heard of shirts before. That's nothing new. So it's not that one invented the shirt. They just all sell them. But they sell shirts to 3 different types of individuals, 3 different customer demographics, if you will. And all 3 of them earn money when they sell shirts, serving that particular person. And that's exactly what I am stressing for you here, is by being clear on who they want to serve, they now have a unique competitive advantage in the marketplace, even though everybody is selling shirts. And that's one of the things that is missing for most real estate investors, is that who are you going to be serving? You don't know. What value are you going to bring to the marketplace and to whom? Are you going to, and here's another example of what I mean by that. Many of you have lots of experience either working, you've worked in industrial complexes, meaning maybe it's a machine shop or you did some CNC work, or you get what I'm saying. You worked in an industrial complex, but you're trying to figure out how to do, and you've never lived in a single family house. But the first thing you're trying to do is to figure out how to serve a customer who wants to live in a single family house and have a single family house rental. How does that make sense? You don't understand that customer yet. You've never even had that experience. But you have the experience of an apartment building. So why not a 4-plex, a 6-plex, a 8, a 10, or 12? Those tend to make more sense because you already know what that's like. You know what that customer needs. So therefore, you are, just by virtue of how you grew up, where you grew up, and who you're comfortable talking to, you're already customized, if you will, to be able to serve that person's needs. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. You've got to be able to serve that person's needs so that you know what you're going to be doing when it comes to bringing value to the marketplace. The next question that many should be paying attention to, but again, most are not, is when. When. This can be one of the more painful questions. Why is it painful? It's painful because you've set goals before. You've said, hey, I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z by such and such a date, and then all these great things are going to happen. And then that date came and went, and nothing happened. Your life is the same. And it can become painful to reset new win goals on that you're going to actually do. And that I understand that. I mean, there have been many deadlines that I have missed. Many. There have been many that I've made. There have been many that I've exceeded. And I know what it's like to fill all of those things. I know for myself, I thought that it was going to take decades upon decades before we could ever have something as simple as 100 units. No one told me that it could happen faster. I didn't know that I was capable of doing it faster. However, I would have never started without putting in a date. Okay, the date I put was way too far out, but that's okay. There was a date and I was moving in the correct direction towards the attainment of that particular objective. And that's the thing, you have to have dates. What by when? It's one of the most important things. So for those of you who are out there running teams, anytime you're delegating, please remember what by when. Always get your team or teammate to tell you what they're going to do by when, so that everybody is clear on what's going to be done and by when. All right? Because this is critical in order to get your business success off the ground, which leads me to the next piece that, again, most real estate investors are not doing but should be, is who. So again, for those of you who have just now joined, what we're doing is we're going through 5 questions that you can ask, that you can use to be able to go out there and make sure that you can build a business that absolutely kills it with clarity. And that's really what I'm talking about. So the next question that we have to answer is who. We've already been through why, what, when, and why, what, and when, and now we're on number 4, which is who. So what do I mean by who? Many of you're not meant to be the ones to actually do certain things. For example, no one ever calls me to hang a picture or to put nail or do any carpentry or plumbing work because I'm not skilled there. That's not my skill set. And it may not be yours. That doesn't mean that skill set isn't needed. It just means you don't have to possess it. One of the most important things that you can do is to figure out who can deliver what it is that the skill set that you need. A common example, probably the most common example, is that most real estate investors are still trying to do their own accounting and books. And it's like, okay, even if you were skilled in that, even if that's what you grew up in the business or business world doing, you no longer should be doing that because that's no longer your role. The CEO is not the accountant. They have differing roles, and you should be delegating as many of those things that are not your 100% strengths as humanly possible. Please start now. It's never too late to begin that process. It's never too late to begin that process. Maybe you aren't the best at doing paperwork. I know that was one of the things I learned quickly because as a wholesaler, I was doing lots of deals, 72 hours or less, anywhere from $2,000 to $26,000 per transaction, and we would churn through paperwork. Escrows open, escrows close, and you know what would happen? I would forget notaries on one document, or I would sign the document incorrectly on one and correctly on another, and then what would happen is a whole bunch of escrows would get held up because one paper on this one wasn't correct, but all the papers on this one were, and it would just be weird. And I needed someone who was more detailed-oriented in the paperwork department, and that's exactly what happened. We got an operations person who now I just show up with stickies, little stickies, sign here, sign here, sign here, and it's that clear, and I don't have to fill out the rest of the statements. I've got to review the things, make sure they're correct, make sure the numbers, all those things, that's fine, but I don't have to fill out those paperworks in detail, and that could become a challenge unless you have someone who has that thinks that way, and that's one of the ways to when it comes to skill sets. See, those four primary resources are still very, very true. There's knowledge, time, money, and credit. They all have to come together. It doesn't mean you have to have all of those resources to make that work. So as I said, we are covering all 5 questions that you can use right now, today, and you promised you're going to use them to be able to go out there, build your business, and make some great things happen. What do I mean by that? So instead of being caught up with the whole business plan idea, what I want you to be able to do is to have something that you can implement in a matter of minutes so that you can execute and have a clearer vision of what it is that you want to do. Because with clarity leads to power, power to decide and act. It gives you 2 things that you can do. You can decide and act when you're clear. Without it, you don't have the ability to do so. So we're going over the 5 questions. And for those of you that just joined, again, I'm Jay Massey, CEO of CashFlowDiary, where we invest time to create real estate entrepreneurs. And we've been doing so across in 76 countries so far. So it's been pretty cool to watch this happen continuously. And we're going over the questions: why, what, when, who, and then the question most people start at. Question number 5. This is the question most people start at, is how. Most people start with how. That's the question they start with, and that's why the rest of them are challenging to figure out. They start with, how do I do this? When who determines the how. Remember, question number 4 was all about who. Whomever is going to be in charge of, say, your books should be the one determining how they're done. For example, are you on a cash or accrual basis? And if you don't know what that is, that's because you're not the accounting person. There's a difference, though, in how you do your books, whether they're cash basis or accrual basis. When is your fiscal year? Is it going to be tied to the calendar? Is there a reason it should be, it shouldn't be? There are times where you need other people's input in order to make these things. You should not be in charge of all of the hows. The person in charge of those hows, who should be in charge of the how. Now, there are some things that obviously, yes, you still need to do. The point is, it's not always you. And because it's not always you, you will have a shot at actually building a business and staying focused on your strengths. We've all had those days, because there's a big difference between that struggle energy that we could use when we're playing, what I call playing out of position. You know, you don't put the pitcher on a baseball team at first base, because those two positions are completely different. Now, that doesn't mean that some pitchers can't play first baseman, but what I am saying is that the pitcher should be pitching and the first baseman needs to be first basing. I don't even know if that's a word. Doesn't matter. My point is, everybody's got a role to play, and how things get done should be determined by the person who's in charge of that particular thing, who has that strength, who has that skill set. So you, me, we do not have all the skill sets necessary to execute even one real estate transaction. Please, I'm going to say that again. We, you, me, we do not have all the skill sets necessary to execute one real estate transaction. We don't have all the resources we need. We, by default, are playing a team sport. But we therefore cannot have this John Wayne attitude that I have to figure out how all of these things are done before I can go and get real estate to happen, right? You didn't spend the decades in school to be a real estate attorney, business formation, but these are things that we have to do. You didn't spend the decades in school figuring out how to do your books, but these are things that we need to do. You haven't spent years holding a hammer and nail. And figuring out how the best way to make, to put up the frame, or the frame in a window, or to frame a wall, or what stucco to use. You didn't do those things. Let the service providers who can help you do and determine how those things are done. They should be giving you things like choices. For example, hey Jay, here's a good drywall. That's not a good one. I don't want to use flooring. Let's use flooring. So here are the 3 types of floorings that we could choose from for this particular apartment unit. This one won't be as durable, but it'll be less expensive. This one's more durable, a little bit more expensive. This one will always clean easy. Which one do you want? And then my guys can go put it in. See, those are the types of decisions you should be making, not necessarily, how do I exactly lay this tile or put the flooring down myself? That's not your world anymore if you're going to be a real estate entrepreneur. All right, there's a difference in the role and the skill sets that you need in order to make these things happen. And that's why these 5 questions exist, is to give you clarity. What should I be doing every day? Now, it's amazingly simple, but that's part of the problem, is that it's amazingly simple and therefore requires a lot of extra, it requires volume in order to actually begin doing the amount of work that's going to make, or having the amount of results that's going to make a difference for you to gain the skill sets at practice. And that's the thing. If you try to, say, learn a new language, for example, that's a skill set. If you try to learn a new language, but you only practice once a month for 15 minutes, you're not going to ever learn that language. It's just not going to happen. You're not repeating those same actions and things frequently enough, with enough volume, with enough intent in order to make that happen. So without the 5 questions and answered, you don't have clarity. You don't know what you need to be doing. More importantly than that is I've given you the 5 questions also in the correct sequence. Please hear me clearly. I've given them to you in the correct sequence in which you need to answer them, because answering them in any other way will cause confusion, and we need clarity. So some of you, maybe you've been looking for clarity. You've been looking for a way to become that real estate entrepreneur. Maybe some of you have even done a deal or two, but now it's time to take it to a business level, to turn what you've done either accidentally, or maybe you inherited, or now you've just had this idea, hey, I want to own real estate. Great. But I need to build it as a business, not just do deals, because there's a big difference. How to get a deal done is one thing. How to build a business that does deals consistently is something completely different, because that's what you want eventually, and that's what we teach people at the Cash Flow Diary to do, is how to go out there and build businesses consistently over time that have systems in place that generate business so that you could be doing the things that really matter for most of us. And we put together a course that can help you do that. Again, obviously we're going to keep producing content here, because this is actually kind of fun for me. And I'm going to keep answering your questions. I'm going to keep doing these things. But I know some of you are ready to take that next step. And we produced a course that's called Cashflow Foundations. If you want, you can go pick up your own copy at cashflowdiary.com/foundations. Again, cashflowdiary.com/foundations with an S. Cashflowdiary.com/foundations with an S. If someone would just type that in the chat for me, that would be great. Again, and then I'm going to review the questions, and you're going to want to take the screenshots real fast. Cashflowdiary.com/foundations. Now, if you joined late, again, my name is Jay, CEO of Cashflow Diary, where we help individuals become real estate entrepreneurs. And we've been doing this now for a little while, and it's actually really, really fun. So what we were talking about, though, is to give you clarity on how to actually execute, and more importantly, go out there and begin building your business. Thank you very much for typing that in the chat. And what does that mean? That means there are 5 very basic questions that you can answer after they've been asked. Just answer them, and you will have a clearer business plan, a clearer vision, a clearer understanding of what it is that you need to do, more than trying to build one of these complicated business plans. So what does that mean? The first question you're going to start with, and again, the sequence is important. The first question you start with is why. Why? Why are you in business? The second question is what? What value are you going to be bringing to the marketplace? The third question is when. When do you want to see that value to begin? When do you want that value in place? When is that going to happen? When are you going to close that deal? That first one anyway. Who? Who is important, because who is not always you. Let me say that again. Who is not always you. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see new people make, is that they think the who is them. Who is not always you. You don't need to know and do each and every little piece of the transaction. That will slow your growth and you down. And then number 5 is how. Whomever is in charge of the who gets to determine how that something is done. Whatever that something is, they're the ones who get to determine how that something is done, because you don't know what is the best way to do your books. You don't know that. What you do know is that the outcome, the vision that you want to obtain, that's your job as CEO. That's your job as the entrepreneur, is to have that vision, cast that vision, keep it in front of the team, communicate that vision, lead the charge to realize that vision. That's what you're supposed to be doing in the real estate space, not necessarily going around and laying floor yourself, okay? So there are different reasons, there are different skill sets for different people as it relates to the real estate transaction. So Again, if you want to make your real estate journey into a business, not just, hey, I got lucky and did a deal, but if you want to have systems for leads, systems for operations, systems for financing and accounting, systems for all of the things, and to build a solid foundation, that's why we put together this particular course. It's called Cash Flow Foundations. And you can go pick up your copy if you'd like at CashFlowDiary.com, CashFlowDiary.com/foundations. And again, if someone could retype that in the chat for me, that'd be great. CashFlowDiary.com/foundations. The whole point that, again, I appreciate all of you taking the time to hang out with me today. Make sure that you, again, I saw a number of you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for the hearts. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the comments. Make sure that you subscribe to the page or to the channel so that, or follow me on Periscope and like the page on Facebook and subscribe to the updates, because again, I know I randomly get inspired. I hadn't originally intended on doing anything at this exact moment, but my schedule had an opening, and through the virtue of technology, I was like, you know what? Here's something, and I can talk to you guys and help, and hopefully some of you, because you promised at the beginning, if you would implement it today, okay? Implement it today. And the only way you're going to keep getting notified is if you make sure that, you follow me on Periscope, like and share. Nonetheless, it's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.